Welcome to Spilling the Spirituality with Hilary, my friend here, and me, Rev Rob. And hopefully you have watched our previous episode because we were talking about the very large, overwhelming topic of truth. Hashtag truth and what that means in our lives.
Hashtag truth.
Yes. Is it freeing? Is it hurting? Is it both? And when we ended last week's episode, I was just about to tell a story. I love that my friend Hilary and I have a friendship where we can share these experiences of, that happen, within us, because I feel like they've always brought us closer, and we don't have to worry about other people in our lives that may have, we've had these issues with, and bringing them into it, because I feel like in many ways this is kind of a great little example, metaphor, real experience.
Yeah,
And it gives us the opportunity to talk about it here.
absolutely. This is our part two. And this is such a critical piece, speaking your truth and how you do it and if you do it and why you do it, that we just felt like it needed more than 30 minutes. And we really want to hear what you think and how you express your truth, or
Yes,
you
please.
don't express your truth and why you don't. And before we go on with this example, I just want to say, as a truther over here, oh, that's got bad connotation, but as someone who generally does speak my truth, mostly because I don't know how to live without being that way. That's how I always was. For me, it's learning how to present it in a way that is constructive and productive, but at the same time, I still stand by my feelings that it's really important, because it's authentic and it's real, and to be anything other than that just doesn't serve me, and I would suppose all of you. Okay. Bring
All
it.
right. So pull up your chair, listen to a tale of Rob and Hilary. So quite some time ago, we were involved. You were involved in a program at the church that I was running, and it had come to a time where you needed to not be a part of the program, but we were also friends. And so I know that it was complicated for you to try to extricate yourself from the situation because of many factors, not wanting to affect our friendship, not wanting to hurt my feelings. But it also got to a point where you could not do it, and then you did. You sat down and we had a discussion, and you brought with you several reasons that you found that you needed to do this, and I was upset because because we are friends, and because I didn't want to lose you in this program, and because I had a vision for how this was all going to play out that included the two of us. So I had a lot of stuff that was this very stuff that you were protecting, and were afraid to share. And, ultimately grew to understand, and it didn't take that long. It just took, the moment of being upset, to realize that, the honesty was more important. The honesty was more important to the friendship than, developing resentment that you had done anything that you didn't want to do just because just for me, and I feel like that was a pivotal moment because it brought us together, and it allowed a full expression of me. I was upset, and I was able to express it. So it's like you expressed your truth, I expressed my truth back to you, which was the reaction that you were afraid of, but it was still the truth. And, we were able to move on. We were able to see clarity beyond that. And I feel like, not only came back stronger as friends, but the vision that I had actually became manifest way later. It's manifest in this experience right here in a way that, I totally appreciate. Um, yeah. So, I've got more to say about it, but like, yeah, what do you remember it clearly, right?
I do remember it. And so at the time, it just, it wasn't a fit for me anymore. I knew I needed to leave. I um, was most afraid of telling you because I have such a love for you, and I was afraid that if I left, you wouldn't want to be my friend anymore. And I, you know, of course, what you didn't see was how I had been struggling with this for a long time before I made this move. But for me, again, now knowing, the kind of person that I am, that like when I'm not speaking my truth, it's coming up, it's coming up. And okay, here's just such an honest moment. When I told everybody, that I was going to this next thing that I was going to do. And I did do that, but for a very short time. But mostly it gave me the out that I needed because I didn't know, because I knew, because the kind of person that I am, I'm fully in whatever I'm doing. I am 1,000% there.
Yes, you are.
Oh, until I'm not.
Until you're not, right.
And then I'm 1,000% not there. And that was kind of what happened. I tend to I tend to make things like maybe better than they are, or like, oh, this is my home, this is it. And then, of course, things start seeping through the cracks, and, you're like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be my home. But more is oozing out the cracks. And I'm like trying to plug all the cracks. But I just began to see that this was not where I should be or could be, even because I was dishonoring myself by staying. And so it's interesting. I did speak my truth, but to be honest, I think I was looking for a way to soften the blow because there was no easy way to say it. I mean, I know it devastated you. It was really, I mean, I felt terrible about it. And for a long time, I felt like I needed to earn your friendship back because I felt like the walls came up, and it was sort of like, oh, yeah, you're just like everyone else. You know, you're done. You're out of here. And the reality was, in my mind, you were going to be my friend forever. And I was like, okay, how do I save this? Because everybody, well, I shouldn't say that. There were a few core people that I still love. And sorry about that. But everybody else, it was okay. Like I could just go. So it was very difficult. And I have a habit of walking away from things and not looking back. And that also upsets people. And for me, I've always been this way. If I feel like a friendship doesn't fit anymore, I'm able to walk away from it and not look back. But of course, there's a trail of hurt behind me, and I'm very aware of that. So while I speak my truth, while I honor myself, I would be lying if I didn't say that I didn't think about it at home and I was like, oh no, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do if Rob doesn't want to be my friend anymore? Or what are these people saying about me? They probably think I'm a traitor. They probably think I'm full of shit, all of this stuff. And that's when I have to do the old, it's not my business how other people see me. I am taking care of myself. And this is when I counsel. This is what I tell my clients, as difficult as this is, and there's nothing more difficult than letting down the people you love. But you can't sacrifice yourself in the process. So I would counsel them, like, of course you need to honor you. So do what you need to do and speak your truth. But yeah, so that place that I was leaving to, that's my truth. And did you know that anyway? That
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I didn't notice. I didn't really know it until I went to visit you there, and then I was like, "Oh, this is not gonna last." But because knowing you and then knowing how that place
How
went.
rigid that was.
But again, and listeners and viewers, like this is us really being truthful in a moment of
Yeah.
truth. So I remember in at when you told me, I knew you were trying to soften the blow in many ways, and so you offered like a list of things that were that were real. And I also, I came to it, and the reason that you were so concerned with a whole bunch of expectations that you knew of because we're close. And, what was happening was actually directly in the line. I mean, it was, those expectations were being shattered, and you knew that they were being shattered because you knew what they were for me. So it is true that the reason that I felt so upset and personally hurt, even though intellectually, uh, you know, what you have to do, you have to do. And I appreciated I certainly appreciated that there was a point where you couldn't not do it anymore. I had to look at that as being a truth. But I was filtering things through this idea of, oh yeah, everybody gets involved and they leave. That's what happens here. Like they get all excited about what we're doing, then it becomes too much and they go. So for me, it was to have my friend be one of those people was just like, oh, like, because it meant that for me, it's either all or nothing. So I'm okay. If my spiritual message that was that we were going to be teamed and doing this thing in, till the end of time was now shattering.
Yeah.
What did that mean? Like everything was going to, like that felt for me that the ground was going to be pulled out from underneath me. And, you know, it was a huge lesson in this kind of going with the flow and reading what's happening and not attaching yourself to what that vision was and realizing that a vision might be that, but something different or evolved. So it was really a flash because I was angry and I probably said things like, you're just like everybody else, like in that moment, much to the horror of people who were watching this all transpire. At the same time, and this is the absolute truth, I felt so grateful that I was able to be upset in that moment. It's going to make me cry because like it was us being us. And I do remember people around us, because it happened, kind of with other people present,
Yeah.
like worried. And I remember consciously thinking, please don't try to interrupt this moment because it is so real. Like she's expressed herself, I've expressed myself. That's all I've ever wanted. Like finally is a relationship that this realness is happening. And for the first time, other people are getting uncomfortable with it rather than I am watching it with other people. And so while I hurt in the moment, even in the moment, I was so I felt such a relief that I was able to be this and to be angry and to maybe say things that, not that I was going to regret, but certainly things that indicated that I was angry,
Yeah.
and you were receiving them. And there was a part of me that, on that day knew, well, if we, we can get through anything because we were just real. It was a very real moment that it kind of sealed for me the fact that I was being who I was in that moment. I was so grateful for you uh, receiving it that way, and it kind of became like a textbook, like, well, difficult information had to be shared. And you, in this example, you heard my truth back, which was my truth at the time,
Yeah.
and walked away with it and had faith that, well, we're going to be friends because that's what we are, like,
Right.
that never waned. So, kind of seeing the forest through the trees, realizing it was a difficult moment, and the levity, just at some point you just got to get levity about it. I was concerned too that, like, okay, well, this is how we usually interacted, because out of necessity you had to travel to be where I was, and like how would this realistically be maintained if it was our one intersection point. But it didn't really matter because it all it all worked out. But I think it all worked out because of that honesty moment. Truly,
Absolutely
truly.
right. Because otherwise, you would still be storing this anger. And I was most afraid that you would not want to be my friend again. And I did feel, for a time that you didn't want to be my friend, which I totally understand. You had that right. And that's the thing. I mean, when you present your truth and you're honest, the other person has the right to come back however they come back. Now, I will say, you got really angry. Now, and I noticed this with my husband too, because he often pushes down his truth. And then when it comes out, it comes out. And
Oh,
it is,
totally.
it is so scary. It is like,
I understand.
all this stuff comes out because he's been storing so much for so long. And for me, it trickles out all the time. So it's not, so I felt like at that time when your truth came out, um, I mean, I was scared. I was like,
I remember physically changing, and I was
I had
becoming.
never seen that side of you.
I
But
know.
at the same time, absolutely. Did I, should I hear however you're feeling? I mean, you have to. Otherwise, I'm a big fat hypocrite. And I guess I just had faith in our friendship and knew that I knew how I felt about you. And I think just kept checking in and trying. And eventually, you let me back in, and look, I understand. I mean, you had probably no idea that this was coming. And even though I was dropping little breadcrumbs along the way, but I was never as direct about it. And when I look back, it was really difficult. I mean, it was hard to hear what you said there was truth. I mean, I could feel the truth.
Right. We were
And
honest with
truth
each other,
hurts. Truth
and
hurts.
I felt like, I'm letting you down. Like I wanted to provide this experience that you were seeking. And when I couldn't do it, like again, because we were friends, it's like, well, as your friend, if I couldn't even do this, then what am I doing here? It was just, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
I
it's
feel so exhilarated talking about it now. It makes me feel
Yeah.
so
And something else to say, because just to discuss partnerships really quick, like or a marriage or romantic relationships, I live with somebody who doesn't always express his truth. He keeps the peace. He's a peacekeeper. And while I appreciate that, it can be very annoying because like sometimes he doesn't say things because I know he's worried he'll hurt me in the process, but I'd rather have a 10-ton weight of hurt in that moment than this scratching my head and wondering. Um, so I just want to say that with relationships, if you have something that you need to say to your partner, you've got to say it even if it's hard, and if the love is really there, like I think it is with Rob and I, you move past it, and you're so much richer for it because you
truly.
have understanding. And it's better than this whole nicey nice thing. I cannot stand that. And we talked a few weeks ago about authenticity and how one of the things that it drives me crazy is when people say, how are you? And how are you? I'm fine. This is it. Well, I ran into someone at the grocery store who asked me how I was. And at the time, I wasn't doing that great. And it's always that moment where you're like, do I say I'm not doing that great? Or do I say I'm fine? So all I said was, well, I'm okay. It's not something I can really go into at a 5 minute, passing at the grocery store. And I hope she understood, but if I don't say that, I feel like I'm being false. And
So
I
interestingly enough, my opposite side of that coin is, again, because I've said I was raised in a place where we didn't talk about things, even though we knew they were there. I'm the kind of person that if I do ask somebody and they do start like unloading, I'm like, oh my God, couldn't you have just said that you were fine? Like I am, that is, so I'm like the other side of that. It's like, so, but there's got to be somewhere in between. And this goes to where we are, in our world, just kind of, we're trained to say fine. And so my programming is that, well, I'm always going to say fine. I'm never going to really tell you how I'm doing. I don't tell anybody how I'm doing, because that's.
But then why do we ask? Why even ask?
So that's an interesting question. That's a very good question, because I don't really have an answer. Why do we ask?
I mean, it's like, it's so false then. If the interaction is you don't really want to know, then why ask? Then why is the question asked?
All
And
right, I'm going to pose this to you though. The question that I would have is, if you're also, you're also a coach and a counselor, and so we both know that there's a point where, if you find that, let's say, one of your clients is always, starting a session by talking about all the bad things or finding all the bad in their life, you are going to help them discover ways that they can see things as, from the other perspective, from being positive. And so, sometimes that does involve the faking it till you make it thing. So I mean that loosely. It's like you do want to train people to say, oh, stop, and say, oh, well, yes, this hurts, or, this happened to me this morning. And to, that position of gratitude of, oh, I'm doing great because, I, whatever, I got up today, I can breathe, I can do all these things. So, how do what's your negotiation of that line of truth, but also finding truth in that there is truth in the good stuff too.
right. And so I guess that's why I feel like I kind of liked my answer with this person, because I was able to make the conversation short and sweet. But I said, I'm not doing that great, but not something I can go into, and just passing at a grocery store. Now, that was the chance. That's when you really know, well, if this person is my friend and is very concerned about me, they might ask a follow-up question, or they might say, oh, well, maybe we could chat later or something like that. But there was no follow-up question, which tells me that, not that they don't care, but they don't really care. I mean,
Okay, so this brings us back to what we were talking about us. So I also operate in this, what others might see as a passive aggressive way of exchanging. So you do, you put those little morsels out of stuff, and you expect some sort of response. I think you and I have negotiated being able to do that very well. Like, I can tell when when it's time for me to ask you and pursue, when it's not, or, you can do the same for me, and have many times that I've held back or was not ready to share about something. But is it fair to ask that of the world? Like, if you are saying, I can't really go into it now, if it's to a clerk, you mean it, and they're going to be relieved, because it's like, great, she answered the question honestly, and she's not going to hold me up because I've got other customers. But if it's your friend, do you mean it when you say it? Are you being truthful in that moment when you're saying, fine, but, I'm not doing all that great, but I'll, let's check on it later, expecting someone to follow up? Is that fair or truthful?
right. Like, well, if I had the expectation that she was going to follow up, that wouldn't be fair. I do think, if I'm being honest, and I'm always honest on the show, that maybe it was like a little test to see what the reaction was. And the reaction was what I thought it would be. So I know that, I mean, I don't want to go into that, but I just know that, yes, I shouldn't have done that. But for the purposes of this show and this discussion, I guess what I'm saying is, I still, even for the clerk, if I was struggling with something, I'm not going to put a sunny smile on my face and say, oh, fine. I can't. I can't even say those words without wanting to vomit in my mouth. Instead, I would say, yeah, I'm going through some stuff, but I'll be all right, or something like that. because I think it gives the invitation to other people to then be honest back. And maybe we could start building bridges with people instead of like this feeling like, oh, well, she's always fine. She seems, she's always good. She's so happy kind of thing. Well, that's not true. Nobody is always happy, but until we start unmasking that, I, I don't know. That's kind of where I come from. I mean, you definitely were right on about your perception with that one instance.
Because I do it. I completely understand. Like you challenge people to know you. Like it's like, okay, I'm going to share just this little bit. And if you are picking up on what I'm, if you're buying what I'm selling, you're going to like move on with it. I'm aware of it. And I'm so grateful that I think that you and I have that because that's how we approach our social, life. Um, but I also realize, wait, is it fair? Again, we were talking about this earlier. I do have this expectation that people that I know very well understand what's going on, that can pick up on my nonverbal cues. We do speak nonverbally. There are people that are experts in nonverbal communication and body language. So then to have something reduced to being my truth has to be actually spoken literally out of my mouth in those words, sometimes I don't think is fair. It's like there is truth to be had in other ways of communication other than just what I'm saying. And I feel like that's the part that makes all of this discussion even more complex, but still is important. So if I feel like you're sharing something with me and you're doing it with a tone or with a perspective, and I'm picking up on that perspective because we're in a relationship, you're my friend or you're my partner, then, then it is your truth that you're speaking, and sometimes you can't hide it, or sometimes you don't want to hide it, or you don't want to say it, but you do want to convey it. And sometimes I think it's not fair because people will say, well, we can't read your mind. I can't read your mind, so you need to share it. But we're metaphysicians. And in fact, if we tune in, it's not like the woo-woo, I can read your mind, but if we tune into people, then we can read them. That's what we're here to remember, that we're all one. Your things are my things. And I feel like even if you're talking kind of psychically, the reason I would be a good intuitive reader or a psychic would not be because I am picking your brain, but I am connecting with the part of me that is you that I understand. That's where the, expressing yourself comes in. I'm not looking at you as a separate being and pulling stuff out. I'm going, oh wait, we're connected in this way. Oh yeah, that's how I know this.
But you're saying, and we're running out of time. We have like 5 minutes left.
This is great.
I could keep talking about it. But so you're saying then that even if I say I'm fine, but you're observing that my body language is acting a certain way, that then you would come to me later and say, I noticed that you seem, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I would. I mean, I expect my relationships to be that way. And they are not, because often people can come back and say to you, oh, I didn't say that, or, oh, the words weren't spoken. You don't need to pursue this any farther. If I say I'm fine, that should be enough for you. But it's like, I know that it's not enough. I know
right.
I know that you're not fine. Maybe you don't want to talk about it. Maybe you're challenging me, whatever.
Right.
I feel like the world is nuanced enough to be living in this place. Not others, everybody doesn't, believe it or not, everybody does not view the world the way I do. And
surprise. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we have to wind this up, but I will say to that if my husband were listening to this discussion, who is, very what you see is what you get kind of guy, does not know how to read between the lines, doesn't care to read between the lines. We've had many discussions like this where I would say, well, don't you understand? I mean, didn't you see the way I was acting or whatever? And he's like, Hilary, if you got a problem with me, you have to spell it out. Tell me what you need. Tell me, whatever. And I kind of agree. I too can do what you're talking about. I can read between the lines, but then I get in trouble because I can feel that something might be wrong. And so if it's a good friend of mine, I might be like, follow up, but they don't want that. A lot of times they don't want that.
Right.
And then they still push you away. So
And a
then,
lot of times they do, as you have proven with your own example of like you kind of put out, say, well, I'm fine, I'll be all right. It's like you got to figure out which
well,
one it
that
is.
truly, I wasn't fine. And I felt like I did spell it out. I was spelling it out, but I was putting manipulation in, which wasn't great. But that wasn't, I brought that example up to show that
No, it's true. No, it's a way of communicating. Is it manipulation or communication? Like, I'm just asking. I understand it, but I know others
No,
might feel.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I guess, and winding this whole discussion up, I guess what I would like to say to our audience is that someone like me and somebody like my husband that I talked about would really appreciate honest, straightforward communication. That's what people like us need, because that's what I probably give to the world. And I hope that that is what I get back. And when I don't have it, there's this big area of gray that I have to sort of sift through. So my point in this entire two-part video is to encourage our audience to speak your truth, to be gracious in how the truth gets conveyed, to not put it in a text message, to to try and do it in person, or if you can't do that, at least on the phone or even on FaceTime or one of those kind of video things, so that the other person can really feel and see where you're coming from. To not express your truth is keeping it in your body, which later harms your physical body. The body remembers everything. So that was really the thrust of my side. And now you tell me the thrust of yours going to.
So I also say, as you bottle up those truths, see our episodes on misdirected anger, because that is also what happens. We explode. I know I do. And I would say, yes, I aspirationally, I believe that the truth is the truth. But grace in expressing it, I feel, will help your truth be heard in a way that you want it to be heard.
That's beautiful. And the reality is 99% of the time when someone expresses their truth, if it's about you, it's probably right on, especially if it's somebody who is close to you. Um, so
Yes.
we
We all
have
have blind spots and they hurt sometimes. And
and
so,
hurt. And the fact that Rob and I went through something pretty major. I mean, we're making light of it, but it was pretty major. And I think for a lot of people, it would have ended friendships. And it's a testament to uh, our truth and our friendship that we were able to move past it and learn from it. There's so
and not sweep it under the carpet. We're still talking about it. And I really have levity about it, but which is even greater. Like it's not something that we just don't talk about now,
yeah. And when that dust settles from the hardship of expressing your truth inside, oh my gosh, you feel such a peace, even if the other person doesn't want to know it, because you got it out, because it was festering for a long time. So,
And we were who we are in those moments. It was an authentic
yeah,
time. So that's what I'm ultimately seeking, is that, in my relationships, is the ability to be me. To just
yeah.
be.
So thanks for joining us today, guys.
Hey, you guys got it. It's all the realness is right here today.
Yeah, and please,
Discussion.
let us know how you deal with this, because it is not easy. Life is messy, sticky, sweaty, yucky, beautiful.
And beautiful, yes.
All right, well, we'll see you next week for our 10th episode. Is that our 10th episode? Yeah.
It will be.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Please like and subscribe.
Bye.